Alright, y'all. Y'all asked for it, so now you're gonna get it. Today we're gonna be covering tanks, specifically how to beat them easier, how to win the tank 1v1, how to beat them as a support, how to beat them as a DPS, or let's say you want to help your own tank who maybe seems to be struggling a little bit, or you just want to be in better sync with them. Well, whether you're a DPS player, a support player, or the tank player yourself, going against or playing with, I got your back. We're here to simplify every single secret cooldown that tanks have that makes them what they are as a tank, enables them, and when they have this ability, they're going to be able to do everything they possibly can to make plays, and when they don't have the ability, that is your opportunity to punish. Let's go. Alright, first up on our list is definitely going to be Sigma. In front of you, you'll see the abilities for the hero as we go down this list. For Sigma, if you had to pick one of these cooldowns, it is definitely going to be, not the shield, not the rock, but Kinetic Grasp. Sigma as a character is really amazing in terms of being an anchor for his team. And what Kinetic Grasp does is it makes that anchor a, well, stronger anchor when he really needs to be. It also helps Sigma whenever he has to disengage out of fights as they maybe start to turn into a kind of a tricky situation and maybe something that would have otherwise been, not so winnable. He's able to restabilize independent of his team and then keep his uptime high. A good habit of any tank player, of course, is recognizing when you need to stay alive, be a little bit independent on your team's resources, therefore kind of fending for yourself. They're definitely going to be a lot harder to kill, but when they don't, that's your opportunity to punish or help your Sigma if you notice that maybe they use it a bit too often. Sound easy? All right, let's go next. Alright, next on our list, we're definitely going to have to address D.Va, very popular tank in the world of Overwatch 2, and has been honestly a fan favorite for years. Everyone seems to enjoy D.Va. Now, with D.Va, again, what is that one ability that is the core that makes D.Va D.Va, and is absolutely crucial and important that you do not waste the ability, and you don't use it just for whatever, and is really responsible in terms of this current state of the game, minimizing how much damage you're taking, and what really enables you to make plays with the rest of your cooldowns and the rest of your kit. It's not the boosters, it's not the micro missiles, kind of gave it away there by having my mouse on it, it's actually Defense Matrix. The Defense Matrix is responsible for mitigation and enabling on the disengage. And as a bonus, a few of these ults that we're going to be going over for the different tanks actually are really helpful in terms of what we call ult chaining. Now, ult chaining means that the ult that the tank is going to build up and have is going to actually help extend and give them back their cooldowns again in order for them to be that much more effective and to really maximize their uptime. When you actually ult, gives you all of these cooldowns back again, and lets you keep your uptime high. It lets you keep being awesome. And it also automatically refills that really important cooldown of being Matrix. So whatever your matchup is against, or if the matchup that you're currently going up against is the D.Va themselves, keep an eye out for their Matrix, because a D.Va without Matrix is significantly easier to punish, and it's significantly harder to make plays when you've spent your too much time wasting it. So keep an eye out for D.Va's Defense Matrix. Alright, next on our list is of course going to be the crazy horse lady herself. We're talking about Orisa. Now, again, if we had to pick one of these cooldowns that is the bread and butter of the tank, that makes the tank do their job so much better when they have it, and definitely makes them more easy to be punished. When they don't, it is of course going to be Fortify. Now, I have talked to some players within the community, as well as some that maybe tend to be not a tank player themselves, or maybe a little bit low elo, and a lot of them kept saying Javelin Spin. I will say this, Javelin Spin is responsible for a little bit of damage mitigation. It's also very useful for perhaps maybe setting up some combos and get deep. If we had to pick one cooldown that is definitely the, hey, if I have it, I can make plays a lot more confidently, versus if I don't have the ability, I'm a lot easier to punish. Fortify is kind of a no-brainer. That's really going to be the one that really enables Orisa as a character, and it's very noticeable when they have the ability versus when they don't. And going off of some of these ult chains that we talked about just a moment ago with D.Va, is Terra Surge, believe it or not, is actually a really, really, really amazing way of prioritizing a different ability so that you don't have to use your core ability, being Fortify, because Terra Surge actually has Fortify built into it. So it's not uncommon, and it's actually super amazingly proactive to use your ultimate in place of your gold to continue to make proactive plays so that you don't have to use the shift, or in this case fortify, and suffer that really long cooldown timer. So it's one of those situations, like I said, it's better to have it and not need it versus need it and not have it. So fortify for Orisa, hands down. Alright y'all, next up, this is probably one of those tanks, in my opinion, that is the hardest in the game to play, master, get a hang of, and for very good reason. But they are really, really fun, and I'm sure a lot of people are really asking how to play Doomfist properly. And if I had to choose one cooldown that really is the bread and butter of Doom, that is kind of what enables everything that Doom is meant to do. Some people may say it's seismic, some people may say it's rocket. In my opinion, it's actually the power block, and let me tell you why. And we'll get to the ult chain in just a second. When it comes to Doomfist, there are two really, really amazingly incredible and impactful things that you have to understand that differentiate current tank Doomfist from Overwatch 1 Doomfist. What Overwatch 1 Doomfist used to be, not to confuse the newer players, but to remind the players that are maybe more veterans, is that in a lot of these situations, the name of the game was use your cooldowns in quick succession for certain specific situations to grant you shields as much as possible. However, you're not a DPS anymore. Tank Doomfist benefits significantly more for letting your cooldowns not drag out, but ride out for longer durations. Rocket Punch is probably the best example of this, because the longer you hold it, the more knockback you get, and the damage also scales as well in terms of being able to hit groups of enemies as opposed to single enemies. Now, speaking of Rocket Punch, the reason we've chosen Power Block is because Doom has two main core parts of their kit. Number one is how threatening you are, and then your cooldown cycle being as optimized as possible in order to min-max that threat, your ult economy, as well as how much pressure you're putting onto the enemy team. So how threatening you are, and then also min-maxing your cooldown cycle. So Power Block, what does it do? It does mitigate damage, but the whole purpose behind it is to get you your empowered punch, which is where all of Doom's threat primarily comes from. Yes, you can do it from displacing. Yes, you can do it from other means, but this one, this big boy right here, that's your main threat. And once you do have that empowered punch granted by your power block, that's what really makes you threatening as Doom, which is a huge part about the character's identity. Now, ult chain for Doomfist, very simply put, when you're using all of these different abilities and you're sometimes letting them ride out to really get the maximum value out of them, what this is doing is it's also giving your other cooldowns time to come back. Getting a successful power block off and getting it fully charged instantly grants you your power-up punch, meaning you get your cooldown back essentially for free. And then what happens if, let's say, you want to go deeper into the enemy backline or go for a more aggressive play? Your ultimate enables you to do so and also gives time for your other cooldowns to come back, which extends that ult cycle, which also extends your ability to be threatening and also extends your ability to be a threat. Doomfist, plain and simple, one of the hardest tanks to learn and master, but really, really fun and amazing once you get a hang of them. I'm a little bit biased, Doom is one of my favorite tanks, but that's the core of Doomfist. Alright, next up on our list is the queen herself, JQ, Junker Queen, whatever you want to call her. The core of this character is a little bit obvious for some, maybe a little bit less obvious for others. It's not going to be Jagged, it's not going to be Carnage, it's actually going to be the Commanding Shout. Now this is one of those abilities that is abundantly clear, complement JQ when she needs it, but can really, really, really help enable her neutral poke, which is from her, of course, her scattergun, in terms of keeping her alive in these fights, and can also be used really creatively in terms of peeling for teammates. The big part about Commanding Shout is that it's responsible for all of your disengages, your engages, either offensively directly on the front line or even peeling for your team when they are in trouble. Maybe, for example, saving your Ana from a Genji blade because that shout gives them a little bit extra temporary health that stacks them so they're unable to get taken out because the breakpoints have now changed. So using Commanding Shout in a variety of ways is definitely something that comes down to the player in terms of skill expression, which I think gives it kind of this really nice, comfortable fit when it comes to JQ and the rest of her kit. It makes it a little bit creative in how you can use it, but don't be mistaken, the commanding shout is definitely the big one that makes JQ who she is, in terms of either getting out of really sticky situations when she needs to get in a hurry, or making aggressive plays when she really needs to close in on a target and finish them off. Alright, next up is Mauga, the big boy. Now, this one should be pretty obvious to most people. You look at all the different things going on with these newer tanks they've added. Some of them get passives, some of them get reworks, some of them get a bunch of abilities, some only get a couple. Mauga is actually pretty straightforward. Using Cage Fight, using Berserker, using your Overrun, and using your two different chain guns, Gunny and Cha-Cha, definitely have their cool little ways of giving the character their own unique-ish character. But the main core of Mauga, that is the ability where if you need it and you don't have it, you tend to be in trouble, and if you have it when you need it and you do use it correctly, you get a lot of extra value in terms of your uptime, and it really enables Mauga to be kind of his own form of an anchor and really add to the sustain character. It's going to of course be Cardiac Overdrive. So this ability is really nice because it also gives a little bit of team synergy, in that the aura around you when using the ability also allows them to take a little bit less damage, and they also get a little bit of self-heal as well when using this ability. But you as Mauga, also get the benefits of the ability itself. So what this does is, again, very similar to Sigma, but in his own way, allows you to be a bit of an anchor for your team, and also really helps you with the sustain ability, whether you are using it to be aggressive, you're using it to hold space, or you're using it even to give a little bit because maybe you've taken a bit too much damage because of your giant hitbox. But yeah, Cardiac Overdrive, I can't state this enough, really enables Mauga when he's in desperate need of a little bit of lovin', whether your team's helping you or not. And if you ever do see a Mauga using Cardiac Overdrive a little bit too free, or a little bit too often, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe rushing the ability, that is the perfect time to punish, because they're a lot easier to take out. Alright, next up is probably going to be my favorite tank when it comes to lore, and one of my favorite characters to play in the entire game of Overwatch. And it's another tank that has one of those really awesome ult chains that we're going to talk about really quick. Now, Ramattra's kit is quite a big one. There's a lot going on. It's one of the characters that we have on the tank list that has different forms, I guess is a good way you could put it. That's how they describe it. And that kind of gives it away for what the core ability for this character is going to be. It is in fact going to be Nemesis form. Now, Nemesis form is quite simply Ramattra's bread and butter. It is responsible for their sustain and their disengage, and actually works really well with their ultimate. So Nemesis form, what it allows you to do is it allows you to stabilize fights when you really need to just eat a bunch of damage for your team on the front line by taking as minimal amount of actual damage from all these different sources because of the significant damage reduction that you're getting while blocking right here. And what it also does is it pairs amazingly and incredibly well with your Annihilation when you're looking to maybe make more aggressive plays. The best example I can give is this. If you are playing Ramattra and you're ever stuck in a situation where you feel like every time you use your punch aggressively, maybe to pierce a Reinhardt and how they're holding shield, and you're able to go through what would otherwise be a problem for other tanks. I know it's tempting, but fundamentally, your Nemesis form is meant to get you out of tricky situations or to stabilize fights. Yes, it can be used aggressively, but if you're noticing that you're doing the primary bulk of your damage with Nemesis and you're completely neglecting how much damage this primary does at a poke as you are getting closer to rush with your team, I highly suggest considering that maybe Nemesis form, maybe just maybe, is not meant to be the main thing that you're waiting to use off cooldown. Your primary amount of damage is coming from this. Your Nemesis is fantastic for the additional movement speed to disengage from fights or to go in and close them out. But and this is the big one, works unbelievably well when we talk about ult chaining. For example, when we talked about Doomfist using the ult to extend the health and the duration of these cooldowns, Ram is very similar. So doing something like using your shield and your vortex, running in with your Nemesis form, and then when it runs out, popping your ultimate, which grants you another Nemesis form to either be aggressive or to stabilize a fight. By the time this cooldown runs out and the duration is over, you're rewarded by having, well, you guessed it, another Nemesis form. So a really common and popular combo to practice right now if you are a Ram player, Nemesis into your ultimate, back into Nemesis. It's a really, really deadly combo string that is very easy to understand, very easy to put in practice, but it tends to not work if you don't have your ultimate, obviously. So I would honestly, for most of my Ram players, use your primary more, get the damage in, use your Nemesis form to either disengage from fights, sustain during fights, or finish off targets, but make sure it's not the primary source of your damage. Sound good? Easy peasy. What's next? All right, next up is going to be Reinhardt, the Rectangle Man himself. This one is going to be maybe a bit controversial, but hear me out, and I think it'll make a lot of sense to my higher Elo players once you hear my reasoning. It's not going to be Charge, it's not going to be Fire Strike, it's actually going to be Barrier Field. Reinhardt's issue has always been, with the current state of all the other tanks and characters in the game, it's been closing distance. Barrier Field, and why he's jokingly called Rectangle Man, is because the main core of the character, the main cooldown that enables Rein to do the things he needs to do, is that shield. It stops him from taking unnecessary damage, as well as his team from taking unnecessary damage by blocking cooldowns, blocking primary fires, blocking abilities, as Rein closes that distance and goes from corner to corner. And as an added one, which I'll show off here in just a second, is that that shield is unbelievably important in terms of animation canceling to min-max the damage that Reinhardt can do once he does finally close the distance, in order for him to even contend with the other sources of high damage from all these other tanks when it comes to brawling out. If we take a look over here, when you're looking at the other cooldowns that Rein has accessible to him, yes, Pin is fantastic, Fire Strike is great for poking, but when you're in a situation where if there was ever an ability that you wish you had, versus if you know you do, you're a little bit more confident, or if you know you don't, you know you're in trouble, it's definitely going to be the shield. And we're looking at animations with Rein. Having the shield, which I'm not even the best at it, but for those of you at home that are maybe more Rein experts, you could definitely do a better job of me. But having this startup animation that you can cancel and then flick, and having the faster fire rate in terms of your primary, even waving in these extra animations where you're able to now increase your uptime with the hero in terms of the primary, having that nice little animation cancel really helps min-max, like I said, for the character, and just the amount of cooldowns, the amount of tempo you can control with this ability. This is definitely the bread and butter and the core of what makes Reinhardt, well, Reinhardt. All right, next up is going to be Roadhog, our final R letter beginning tank name. I just realized how many of these tanks have R as the first letter in their name. Anyway, point of the story is that when we're looking at Roadhog, he's a very big body tank, not as much as Mauga, but he's one of those characters that I notice a lot of the players that play him well in high elo understand this concept very, very well, and a lot of players in low elo definitely struggle with this regardless of the tank that they're playing. But minimizing the damage that you are taking unnecessarily is a really, really, really huge part about playing the tank role, as well as DPS and support, but definitely the tank role. Nothing is worse than having a tank that feeds excessively. Now, getting into that, the reason I've chosen Take a Breather as the core cooldown for Hog, and I know some of you may be going, but wait, no, it has to be Hook, it has to be Hook. Not necessarily. The reason is this: a really bad habit for low elo Roadhogs is that they often will wait around trying to land their hook, and when they miss or they don't have it, they end up being essentially AFK. Take and ask any good, and this is also applies to Ram when we talk about Nemesis form, take any high elo Hog or Ram player, of course, and if you ask them or even watch their gameplay, they are using their cooldowns to enable their playstyle. They are not surrounding or what's the word I'm looking for? Their entire playstyle is not based around the one cooldown. That's not how it works. Cooldowns in this game, and this is not just for tank, are meant to complement the core of the character in terms of how they behave in the neutral. Hook enables and provides Roadhog a way of making plays, of course. But Take a Breather is significantly more of a core cooldown if I had to choose one for Roadhog, because it enables Hog to rotate around the map while minimizing how much of that unnecessary damage they are taking. And it also adds to their ability to be self-sufficient when there are scenarios where they do need to take a step away from their team, or maybe their team is unable to help them in the moment. So it allows the tank to stay alive, maximizes uptime. It maximizes his uptime, and then also allows him to enable the other cooldowns that he has accessible to him and make plays. So Take a Breather, in my opinion, is the clear, obvious choice for Roadhog because of how it complements the rest of his kit. I think changing it to a meter was one of the best things they've done for this character. Sure, maybe Roadhog could be tweaked here and there, but overall, I think this was a fantastic quality of life change. Not to mention the fact that you can use it and you can, your ultimate, pair it with another cooldown and then still heal yourself up if you need it is also a nice touch. But yeah, Roadhog, I think it's quite obviously, at least in my eyes, Take a Breather is going to be that core cooldown where if you have it, you're significantly more confident in those situations because you can be self-sufficient. And if you can't use it for some reason, for example from an anti, or if you run out because you overuse, you're definitely going to be in trouble. Alright, next up, let's get into some monkey business. It is going to be Winston, the Brainiac scientist from... Where's he from? He was from Earth, and then he went to the moon, and he went back to Earth. Anyway, one of the OG tanks that we have on this list from OW1, Winston's core cooldown that you definitely don't want to waste. When they waste it, they're punishable, and when you have it as Winston, you feel that much more confident in making your plays, setting up your plays, and getting out. There's the key, getting out of sticky situations when used correctly, whether you are half diving or full diving. If you don't know what those terms mean, don't worry, we have a video for that coming out soon as well. For those players out there that want to learn how to play dive correctly, whether you're a tank, a DPS, or a support player. And yes, we will also have a video coming out for y'all in terms of how to play against dive, because a lot of people tend to dive characters, and it's very simple, and I will make sure I show y'all. Anywho, jump pack is going to be the ability for Winston. Very straightforward. When you're in situations where you do want to close that distance and go in on your target, the jumpy or your jump pack is the main thing that enables you to do so. Now, a really big part of this is that you are in a situation where you do use your jump. Your shield is what's really going to allow you to wait out the cooldown, do your damage, mitigate any unnecessary things, and then use your jump pack to either retreat back to a safe high ground or to maybe even leap in for the next target that you're looking for. But yes, jump is going to be the bread and butter of Winston. Shield, of course, being a way of waiting out the time for your jump to come back, which allows you to now make for your next play, reset if you need to, be more aggressive, etc., etc. Now, into the ult chain. Winston's ultimate gives you an instant second jump. So whether you're going for an unbelievably risky play where you end up halfway off the map and you need to get back on very quickly, and then maybe go for something that includes the crazy juggles that you're able to do with this hero, the ultimate pairs really well with giving you additional mobility, whether it's to reset, go for the next target, or popping the ultimate and getting that nice little extra swipe damage after you go for a leap combo to begin with. It's just a really nice way of complementing what makes Winston Winston. And as a dive tank, he is all about that mobility. So again, the main core ability. If they don't have it, you punish them. If you do have it, you can make plays happen. It is going to be how you use your jump pack. Shield helps, but the jump pack, the mobility, that's what makes Winston Winston. All right then, and next on our list, of course, we're gonna have Zarya. Zarya is gonna be definitely a lot simpler of a tank to do this on. It's pretty straightforward. It's not, don't overthink it. It's quite obviously going to be her bubbles. I mean, there's not really much going on for Zarya. She is probably the most simplistic tank on this list in terms of there's really only one bubble to use. It's just more of a matter of how you use it, if that makes sense. Whether you're using it on yourself or you're using it for allies, the main bread and butter, of course, is going to be your bubbles. A metaphor that I like to use, and we're currently using to actually coach BAME 1, is a metaphor that we call dancing shoes. So, a little pro tip for those Zarya players out there is that big mistake that I tend to see is that people use bubbles for energy. This is fundamentally wrong, because if you have 100 energy, but you don't have any bubbles, you become, what? Very punishable. Your bubbles are built-in cleanses, and they're really good ways of mitigating vital cooldowns that would either give yourself or your team trouble. And if you play correctly as Zarya, as you threaten and as you take space, your bubbles enable you to do so, and they actually reward you for using the bubbles to mitigate these high sources of damage. And they also really help you control the flow of a lot of these fights. Now, here's the rule. If you're out dancing and you got both your shoes on, you're on the dance floor, you're looking for someone to dance with, you're chilling, you're doing your job. Now, if one of your shoes falls off, the rule is you gotta lean against a chair or your cousin or the wall while you put your shoe back on, right? And in this case, that wall is quite literally a wall. So being close to cover when you're down a bubble or using a bubble to get to that wall is just a really good habit to have. And same way as if you're looking for a dance partner, if both your shoes are missing, you don't got any shoes on, you have no business being near the dance floor, and you need to go sit down, which means break LOS of the enemy team until you at least have one of your shoes on. And then once they're both on, then you can start looking for a dancing partner again. But yeah, bubbles are going to be the bread and butter for Zarya. Don't waste them. If you do, for the sake of energy, you kind of deserve to be punished for it. And one of the big things about Zarya is staying alive and preserving that energy, not wasting it, because nothing is worse than being a Zarya, or nothing is more noticeable than playing against a Zarya that rushes their bubbles, wastes them, and then dies, as opposed to saving their energy for the next fight, or keeping their energy uptime high to snowball full rounds. Very noticeable. I'm even of the opinion personally that if you had to choose between using your ultimate or wasting bubbles, I would rather have you use grab and run from a fight and get your bubbles back, because I significantly I'm of the opinion that I think that grab is significantly weaker than a lot of people think it is, because if you look at all the other ults in the game, I think grab has just too many things that can stop it. It can be deflected, it can be mitigated, it can be cleansed, it can be lamped, it can be pedaled. There's so many things that get around grab to where, in my opinion, if I had to ever pick an ultimate that I would have no issue whatsoever with going, stay away from me, in order to preserve my other cooldowns, it's definitely going to be grab. So don't be afraid to use grab to preserve your own bubbles, your own cooldown economy, and preserve your own life. That's my little pro tip for Zarya. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Alright, now the final tank on our list, and this is the one where I know I'm gonna get but this, but that from some people, and I think others will instantly agree with me. If we're looking at Wrecking Ball as a character, there is one cooldown in particular that is the identity of this hero, and if you don't have it, your downtime will crush you. And if you do have it, you're able to do significantly more. It's definitely going to be Grappling Claw. Now, a lot of y'all will probably say Adaptive Shields, and I do think that there's a bit of an argument for it. However, if we're talking about the core of what Wrecking Ball is, it is going to definitely going to be a dive tank. He is a displace, high mobility character. So the reason I cannot give it to Adaptive Shield is because if it was Adaptive Shield, the implication would be if you didn't have the ability, you can no longer exist in the same core of what Wrecking Ball, what makes Wrecking Ball Wrecking Ball. And respectfully, I just do disagree. There are situations where yes, having your Adaptive Shield allows you to do more, but you could make the same argument for his ultimate. You know, it is a resource that is meant to be used proactively, and has, you know, different applications based on the last quote-unquote rework. It wasn't really much of a rework, but rework that he received. Grappling Claw is still the core of what makes the character the character. I love this skin, by the way. The fact that there's a Santa Claus hamster on my screen is just absolutely hilariously adorable. Anywho, The point is what this ability does is it enables Wrecking Ball to be Wrecking Ball. And with all these new techs that exist in terms of being able to quickly, retract the grappling hook and then set up for your pile drive, change your forms to where you can do all these amazing things. The fact that you get almost a free pile drive built in is unbelievably amazing. How it adds to, or rather it strings into all the other abilities that you have in your kit, such as your boop and things like that. I really don't think there's much of an argument, at least the more and more I say it out loud, for anything other than grappling hook. I definitely think it's the big ability where if you waste it, it's very, very, very noticeable when that ball player is either super, super, super open to being punished, or is super, super hard to deal with because of how fast this character is able to move around the map. So Wrecking Ball, I genuinely think it's going to be grappling hook. Now, ult chain. This hero has an ult chain, but it doesn't necessarily work the way that you think it is. Now, the same way how Doomfist has high mobility using all of his cooldowns in tandem or chained together, makes the character who and what they are. Wrecking Ball is a bit different in that you don't have to master one specific cooldown cycle or one specific chain of command when it comes to when to use this cooldown and when to use that cooldown. Such as, for example, as power block giving you empowered punch. There's no cooldown that Ball has to where you have to do this one first in order to give you the min-max of what the character can do. Doomfist, well, empowered punch comes from power block. If you don't have the power block ever getting charged up, you're not going to have the empowered punch, so you are technically being kept from the maximum damage that the hero can do, if that makes sense. With Wrecking Ball, it's not quite the case. However, using your minefield to zone, trap, pressure, deny, and also set up for the rest of your kit, especially grapple, maybe booping people into the minefield, or now being able to, what we call, when we say zoning, trap people by limiting their options, because if minefield has covered this half of the map, we now know they can only be on this half of the map, and now all of a sudden doing something like booping them becomes a lot more straightforward because you limited the options that the enemy has in place. So this is technically an ult chain, but it's a very niche functioning one. This is not something that is a, hey, use this button, then this button, then this button. It's definitely a understanding that this character is definitely going to be a brain diff character. Ball has always struggled in the 5v5 format, so understanding that his ult complements the rest of his kit, but not in the most linear of ways. One of Ball's strengths is that he isn't meant to be played linearly. He's meant to be played adaptively, no pun intended with the adaptive shields. So there is a unofficial ult chain when it comes to using his mines, of course, but Grappling Claw is going to still be the core of this character, what makes the character it. And if you're wasting grapple or you're caught without your grapple, you're going to be in trouble. And if you have it and you use it wisely, you're going to be able to make a lot of plays happen with this character. Boom. All right, y'all, that's going to be it. That is my every tank's dirty little secret video. Tank analysis. Those are all the cooldowns for every single character, every single tank character in this game that I believe is the core of the character. And if you waste them, you're going to be in trouble. So if you see the enemy tank waste them, make sure you punish. If you see your tank waste them, or you are the tank player that wastes them, make sure you fix that bad little habit right now. And if you do have the cooldown, understand that that is what enables you to make so many amazing plays and carry a lot of your teams. I think tank is a very misunderstood role. I think it's a very difficult role to play because there's not a lot of information out there on how to play the role better. So for any of the higher elo tank players that are watching, I always encourage y'all to encourage people in the comments to try out the role, help build their confidence, help the community learn how to play the role more effectively. And that's where I'm doing my very best to make these concepts as simple to start if you're just starting out, and as simple to recognize if you're someone that's been doing this for years and can look at it and go, yeah, that's a good place to start. So If you liked the video, make sure you let me know in the comments. If there's anything you would change or maybe you'd like to see made better for the future, I'm always open to criticism because I think it helps me grow as a person as well as a community lead. And with that being said, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, see you on the next one. Peace.